Sports Beat Radio, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This one coming to you live from the Target Center in Minneapolis, site of this year's Big Ten basketball media days. And can't think of a better way to start it off than with the man himself, Don Fischer. Don, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm doing well, Jim. Maybe if I could talk, I'd be doing better.
You're not here, so you're already doing better. Well, there is a lot to talk about. It's hard to even figure out where to start, but I guess I'll start with Rod Carey. Rod Carey has been named the offensive coordinator for Indiana. Of course, that is a big change. But not only that, Indiana goes and makes another surprising move, and they bring on former Virginia Tech head coach Dustin Fuentes as a consultant, I guess, whatever that means. So a lot of cooks in the kitchen here, which I'm not sure is a good thing or bad thing. It seems like it's all going to be helpful, but that's a lot of change in the middle of a football season, probably more so than I've ever seen for any team.
Well, this is the second year in a row that we've had a change, and for the second year in a row, Rod Carey is in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Last year, he was replacing Darren Hiller as the offensive line coach, as everyone knows, midseason, and this year he's now the new offensive coordinator for this Indiana football team. I'm a high guy in regard to what I expect from Rod Carey. I think he's an excellent coach, number one. I think he's always been involved with the offense, number two. He's been an offensive line coach. He's been an offensive coordinator at other schools. He's been a head coach where he had tremendous success in his 9 years as a head man, 7 of those bowl teams, or 7 bowl teams, 6 of them at Northern Illinois. I'm a big fan of Rod Carey's. I don't think there's any question this guy will do a great job in that role. And he said in his press conference last Monday or Tuesday, whatever, it was Wednesday, actually, they had the press conference. He said in that press conference, we're going to simplify the offense. We're going to make it a little bit easier to understand. We're going to try to do the things that we do well, what we've shown that we can do well. We're going to do those most of the time, and we'll add some new wrinkles itself. But right now, I don't think he's trying to change a million things for these players, because that's a recipe for disaster during the middle of a season.
Absolutely. And you mentioned him being a former head coach, as is Dustin Fuentes. And it just makes me think that the most success that Indiana's had under Tom Allen is when he had Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack, who are both currently head coaches.
Right.
So having that kind of coaching knowledge around you, and for these players specifically, can only mean good things. We saw what happened with Rod Carey with the offensive line last year. I'm still shocked over the win at Michigan State last year. I don't think I'll ever get over that one. The surprise of that, seriously, of what that they were able to do there and to do it on the road. So I'm not going to be surprised to see some very, very positive changes, because there's a lot of talent on that team.
They have talent. There's no question about it. The thing that the Maryland game bothered me, and the thing that bothered me most about the Maryland game, aside from the offensive ineptness in that contest, the thing that bothered me most was the defense in that contest. I just did not understand why the defense did not perform better than they did in that contest. Maybe, I don't know if there was something else going on there, whatever the case may be, to give up 44 points to Maryland, and not saying that Maryland isn't capable of doing that, and a big part of the reason that the defense probably didn't play great was because they were on the field most of the game. But at the same time, I was surprised that the defense did not play a little bit better than they did in that contest. And to me, it was a total dysfunction of the football team in that matchup. And I'm not saying that Maryland shouldn't have beaten Indiana. I think Maryland's a really good football team, but I just thought Indiana would have a better showing than they did. And now we're going to find out if this change makes a difference, because they're going to play a Michigan ball club that might be the best team in the country right now. They are playing.
No question.
They are playing great defense. They are playing great offense. They've given up only no more than 6 or 7 points in any game until they played Minnesota this past weekend, and they beat them 52-10. So I'm telling you.
PJ Fleck said this is the best football team he has seen in his 11 years as a head coach.
Tells you something. I mean, PJ is one of those guys that I don't think he's going to BS you at the end of a ball game like that. And
not when you get beat like that.
Right. And I think he believes that. And based on what we've seen at this point, I don't know how anybody can question it, because they are playing absolutely. I don't want to say perfect, but when Jim Harbaugh is out there telling you how great they played in this ball game, that's saying something.
Yeah, and he was off fishing for the first 3 games, so he wasn't even there, and they were still doing that.
Right.
So they've got, they're the talent on that team. Ironically, you mentioned how good they are defensively. I was looking at NCAA stats the other day, and 3 out of the 4 top offensive programs, or those Pac-12 schools, 3 of the 3 that are coming to the Big Ten. But then as I looked across the aisle to the defensive standings, number 1 was Michigan at 6 points a game. Number 2 was, I believe, Penn State or Ohio State. And whichever one that wasn't, it was the other. It's Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, 1, 2, 3 in the country defensively. So that's going to be exciting next year to see that. But getting back to this, Michigan has it all. They've got a solid quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. So they're just a solid football team.
Yeah, they're playing spectacularly right now. And the story in my mind at Michigan is not Blake Corum. It's not J.J. McCarthy. It is the offensive and defensive lines. These guys are playing lights out.
Yep. And that is when you're winning the battle of the trenches, that's where it all starts. And if you protect your quarterback and you're opening the gaps for a guy like Blake Corum and protecting J.J. McCarthy, it's going to be a long day for you.
Well, I think, and I want to go back and look at this now. I think they've only given up 3 sacks in 6 games. So
we don't even know when that came. That could have come probably at the end of a game somewhere.
Right, exactly. So no, we're looking at a football team right now that looks like a juggernaut. And I'm talking about Michigan being that, because they haven't played this well since Harbaugh became their head coach. And without doubt, this year they look like right now the best team in the country, in my opinion.
And he hasn't said much either. He's not bragging, and he's a guy that will do that. But he hasn't. I think he is just holding this all in until the last regular season of the game. They play somebody south of there. Ohio State.
Well, they beat him last year. They beat him last year.
Oh, they beat him 2 years in a row now, I think.
Right.
And not only that, he caught so much flack because what did he go, like 0-7 to start?
Right.
And he was really getting, and now he's just living in the glory, I think. But winning a national championship would be different. But that's the kind of team Indiana's going up against this week. And not something else to mention, their backup quarterback, the number 2 quarterback, is Jack Tuttle.
Right. And he's not playing much, but he has completed 5 of his 6 passes.
Yeah, they don't need him. And the one I saw him get in one game, and he got hurt on the play he was in, so he didn't. And he was begging to get back into the game. But getting back to Indiana, going over, probably not the game that you want to restart with the changes they've made. But it is what it is. So you're going to have to deal with that. But they have to look at the schedule beyond that. They have to get through this game. And it's not like you can say, well, we're just giving up on it. But there is just a realism to it and say, we know who they're playing, and I don't care who is going up there. This is the best, probably the best team in the country.
Yeah, I can't argue it. I believe it. I think that they're playing the best of anybody in the country right now. That can change with injuries and those kinds of things. But if they continue the way they're performing right now, they'll go unbeaten on this season.
And more importantly, Indiana still has games on their schedule that what I call are winnable games. Penn State, probably not one of those. But you've got a game against Rutgers, a game against a Wisconsin team that is good, but they've been up and down as well. The Illini, I think, are the worst team in the Big Ten, and that includes Indiana. Michigan State's on there, and Purdue has not had a great season. So there is still unbelievably, Indiana still has the opportunity to get to 6 wins, as crazy as that sounds, if they can get a turnaround and get things, like I said, there is talent there. It's got to be used in a proper way, and they've got to do what they need to do.
Well, no question. And Taven Jackson has struggled a little bit here the last couple of weeks. So hopefully it can get turned around for him. Josh Henderson hopefully is back this week after sitting out the last several ball games because of injury. Another thing that the bye week has done, given these rest of these kids that have been dinged a little bit, an opportunity to get back. Nick Toomer being one of those, because he looked so good in the early part of the season. So hopefully this Indiana football team will go into this Michigan game healthy, that they will go into it with a different mindset, with more positive mindset. And if they do those kinds of things, I think that they'll be competitive in this ball game, at least for a time. I think that's the biggest key, is being competitive in this matchup. I think that will be, if nothing else, and we don't like saying this, but a moral victory if they can compete.
And it really is, because you've got to have some confidence, because I think that's the thing that they have none of right now. They don't have confidence. You talked about the defense. I'm wondering if it's just a mental thing, and you've got to have something that lifts you up, lifts the unit up, tells you that, hey, we've got a shot here. And maybe whether it's Justin Fuentes or Rod Carey, and Justin Fuentes, that's a very interesting ad. You talked about the success of Rod Carey. Justin Fuentes did a good job look at his record at Va-Tech, and it was not bad at all. They had a couple of so-so years at the end, which were like 5-5, 5-6 during COVID or something. But other than that, they were 7-8 games. So, and that's not an easy place to play over there in the ACC. So he knows what he's doing. So it's going to be interesting to see what both of these coaches can add to this team, more importantly, and to their mental mindset.
Yep. Well, mental is the physical is 4-1. That was Bob Knight's favorite saying, and he's absolutely right. If you believe you can, you got a chance. If you don't believe you can, you got none.
Absolutely. I know you don't follow basketball recruiting because you're smarter than that. You don't get into that mess. But Indiana is they're in the absolute final stages for multiple big-time elite recruits. First of all, that is something that has not happened for a long time. There were some Indiana guys that Indiana was able to land within the state, but to land the elite talent that I'm pretty certain that Liam McNeely is going to end up at Indiana. Boogie Fland is a guard out of New York that I think Indiana has a better chance than people think at landing. Derek Queen, I'm not so sure about, but if they land Boogie Fland and Liam McNeely, that's going to be a gigantic class. But more importantly, that is also selling Mike Woodson's program. It's selling based off of Jalen Hood-Schifino, what his success was, Trace Jackson Davis, what he's been able to do there. And that message that Mike Woodson is sending is starting to resonate.
Well, you're right. I don't follow recruiting at all. Other than to ask a question or two of guys when I'm down there to see if there's recruits that have been on the table, so to speak. And it sounds like we've got probably 3, 4, maybe 5 guys that are really looking strongly at Indiana right now that are of that top ilk of players around the country. So that's a very positive thing in itself, but you got to get them, and you've got to get more than one of them probably if you're going to be exactly where Indiana needs to be in regard to national stature is concerned. So right now, that's the big question mark. Can you get them, and when are they going to make that verbal announcement that will help get the other guy to come in?
Oh, don't think that Hoosier Nation is not just hanging on the edge of their seat waiting for Liam McNeely. He's probably going to be the first one to make his announcement, and I would think that might come within a week or so. Boogie Fland at the end of the month. But what's up next for you? You've got the Coaches Show again back this week at Chop Shop.
Yep, back at the Chop Shop this week, and Rod Carey, I did an interview with him this past week, and that portion of that interview will be on the show on Wednesday night. So we'll have the assistant coach that we've just talked about here in regard to the offensive coordinator's role with us on Wednesday night, not in person, but at least on tape. And then, of course, we'll have Coach Allen with us as well at 7:05 on Wednesday. And then, of course, we got Michigan coming up on Saturday. So this is going to be an interesting week, to say the least.
It is a loaded week. Did you make it out to Pro Day?
I did not. No, did not make it.
Neither did I. They were not interested in looking at my services, unfortunately. Don, I can't thank you enough, brother, as always. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Wednesday at Chop Shop.
Appreciate it. Thanks. See you, Joe.
So you bet. The great Don Fischer joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We've got lots more coming up. Back with it live from the Target Center here in Minneapolis, site of the 2023 Big Ten Basketball Media Days.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. All right, Dustin Dopir. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay, Dustin Dopir should be next.
Yeah, that headset is nothing but a microphone right now.
So, yeah, it makes you very quiet when you put it down. But it's okay. I can still hear you.
How's that?
It's very loud now.
I'm watching people carry food back and forth. See, I don't know. This is where they put us last year. I'm not sure this is where we're even supposed to be this year because I asked somebody. That's another thing. There's nobody here to help you, tell you Jack.
Really?
I'm like, does anybody know where Radio Row is? Oh, I think it's down at the opposite end.
This was the dumbest thing Kevin Warren. Kevin Warren did a few dumb things in his tenure. This is definitely the dumbest. Having Big Ten Media Days in Minneapolis.
I'd like to beat the hell out of him. I don't mean that literally, so don't get excited, folks.
Yeah. I won my first 2 parlays, legal parlays this past weekend.
Huh?
I won my first 2 legal parlays this past weekend.
Oh!
I got a college football parlay and an NFL parlay yesterday that I hit.
Well, I'm going to have to start getting you to bet for me because last year I was just loving life. I was hitting parlays here and there. Boy, I'm like, yes. This year they're like going, hey, sucker, we were just reeling you in, baby.
Hook, line,
Dustin, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, you guys. Got to be on the move because Maxine's got thoughts this morning.
Uh-oh.
We love Maxine.
Like a lot of
Welcome to the Arctic Circle of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where nobody but Jim is there.
That's
nobody
right.
here
It's
is happy to be
today,
here
huh? Wow.
either. I can tell you that.
It's actually today's only the women. We didn't realize that until earlier.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not one single thing wrong with that. And, well, I mean, I'm sure the IU women are picked to finish higher. than the men are.
You know what?
Mm.
I would, and I will ask her out on the deal, and she'll probably give me the coach speak answer. But if I was Terry Morin, I'd be a little pissed being picked second with what they have coming back.
They do lose Berger. So who's picked to finish first?
Oh, it's got to be Iowa.
Oh, right.
Caitlin
Clark. Okay, yeah, I wouldn't be. That's right, of course.
But I mean,
right.
Sure.
Here we go. 20 seconds, guys.
That's $299. That's right. Play as many rounds as you like for just $299. That's better than a birdie. But you don't have to be a student to play at Eagle Point. Go online to set your tee time or call 812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, and we are live from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, side of the 2023 Big Ten men's, or the Big Ten basketball media days, I should say. Today is the women. Tomorrow the men are on the dais. But welcome aboard, Dustin Dopir from the Indy Star. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Jim. How about yourself?
Cannot. Yes, I can. I can't complain. I won for once. I'm not where I hate being here.
Not a big fan of this move, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, it wasn't last year, and we've got to come back for the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
But
I will say the hotel
it's a gorgeous city. It's not, but
not only that, and I'm going to give it props. It's a hell of a sports town.
It is.
I'm really surprised because last night I got in. I was just over at the hotel restaurant and just watching the end of some football games. And then as soon as the Vikings were playing at home, the Chiefs, and first of all, I can't believe how many Chiefs fans traveled. I sat next to a guy who by himself flew in from Boston just for the game. But I was like, okay, the Target Center's down here. Target Field's over there. The football field was like right over here. And the guy says, yeah, the hockey arena's over there and the soccer's over there. I'm like, damn.
Yeah, they pack it in close.
They love their sports. And it's like Indianapolis with the Colts. They love their football team. Of course, the Vikings have been around forever and they've got great history. But I never thought of Minneapolis as a sports town.
Oh, yeah.
They are a sports town.
They are. Well, you guys are going to see it in town because I mean the ALDS comes into Minnesota tomorrow, and it's 1-1 with Houston. That's a big win for them last night. Getting in that series basically and not going into Houston and getting their doors blown off. I mean. So they'll be able to come into Target Field. I mean, they've taken home field advantage back in that. I think we've seen the continuing effect of these 3-game series is that the teams that win them go in with running starts basically into the division series, and these teams with buys are just knocked on their heels almost immediately. You're seeing 100-win teams staggered immediately because these guys come in with running starts. Minnesota looks great, and so big win for them last night. So you're going to get to if you're there for 2 days, you'll see Minnesota get up for their game tomorrow. I think they might be playing in the afternoon. I think they might be the early game.
Wow. That was on last night. I saw it was like a 5-0. They were just pounding the ball down in Houston. So lots of positive things going on for the Minnesotans.
Yeah.
So there's that. Indiana football, big changes. Rod Carey, again, moved into a different role. They keep moving him back to whatever he's actually doing and then back into a new role. But then they bring on Justin Fuentes, which is a smart move. But it also, it strikes of desperation in a sort of way. And then it makes you wonder, Ooh, that's a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Mhm.
If there is success, boy, there's going to be all kinds of questions next year.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's success, they'll be fine. The bigger issue is if there's not success, they'll all be looking for jobs. And that's honestly the
But they signed Rod Carey to a 3-year contract, right?
I guess so. Yeah. I know it's not,
which is odd to me.
Yeah, it is to me too. I mean, I think frankly, one thing it does is it adds more buyout money and says, okay, if you're getting rid of all of us, you're going to have to pay Rod, a decent amount of money on top of what you already had to pay Tom Allen.
Or you're forcing if there happened to be a new staff, you're going to force him upon them.
Yeah, you're not. No, you're not. The new staff is not saying we're taking offensive coordinator Rod Carey. They are not. I promise.
Well, I don't mean as the OC.
If there is a new staff, well, maybe. I mean, Rod Carey's, has had some success, obviously as a coach. So we're not going to act like he hasn't brought anything to the table. And frankly, I thought he did a really good job last year. They got better at offensive line when he took over.
Absolutely.
I think that's 100% fair to say that was a better offensive line. Running the whole entire offense is a different story. Very different story. So that's going to be, I'm stunned isn't the word, but it definitely, it has the mark of a staff in what do we do now mode, basically, because it's a trying to do something that says something about stability. But I mean, Rod Carey is a good coach. I don't know if you necessarily ever think of Rod as the, this offensive wizard. And I think what he said was I didn't watch the whole thing, but I just saw the quote basically of him saying, we're just going to do what we do well and not do what we don't do well. And that's great from I think his common sense is useful. I'm not trying to downplay that, but I mean, generally you are, if you are a defensive guy as a head coach, you're looking for somebody who, is a real X's and O's guy, real into somebody who has Walt Bell's, not track record, but more like his, I don't know, like the way you look at it, style, stuff like that. And that didn't work. So they're just in a weird spot where it's like, okay, what's going to work? Cause we don't know. And I don't know. It doesn't, you don't look at it and say, oh, they figured it out then, I think it helps to have somebody on staff. You're not forcing anybody to do anything that they're not used to doing. He's had some time with the quarterback, quarterback room to get a sense of what it's like. But you don't think Rod Carey and think, man, space age offense, this is going to be great.
If you did, he wouldn't be at Indiana.
Sure.
Being a consultant, whatever it was. And I'm not dissing Rod.
Quality control. I mean, there are a lot of good coaches that have been in quality control jobs. I think Mike Elko was in a quality control job in the not too distant past, and he's doing great stuff at Duke. I mean, obviously, coaching isn't always a straight line as far as moving up that ladder, and you end up in positions, you catch a tough break somewhere, you get buried, and you end up in one of these gigs, but then you get back at it and you can end up being a head coach and end up being great. I mean, there's a lot of coaches who have been fired who go someplace else and are successful, and that doesn't even mean that Walt Bell won't and catch a break someplace else, but
like at UMass.
That didn't go well. I mean, that's a bad job. UMass is bad.
Yes, that's true.
It's a really
but here's my
as an FBS school when it was an FCS.
Justin Fuentes has had success. His run at Virginia Tech wasn't really bad. I mean, he didn't win a big time bowl, Sugar Bowl or something like that, but there were 7-8 win seasons, and with maybe 500 seasons. I think that was the worst that he had there, but it really makes you wonder if you've got somebody like that on staff, is Indiana looking ahead?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I don't. I'm looking back and reminding myself of his record. He did had a couple really, really good years at Memphis, was 10-3, won the Miami Beach Bowl in 2014. And then he goes to Virginia Tech in his first year. He's 10-4. I mean, you have the issue there that you go the other way. He starts 10-4, 9-4, and then 6-7, 8-5, 5-6, 5-5. So, possibly. It's not totally out of the question, but I mean the issue they're dealing with still, still exists. I mean they owe Tom Allen a big buyout. I mean I guess it makes sense to bring somebody in and get some sense of it, but is Fuentes going to want that job? Is he takes an analyst job while he's kind of on the lookout for something, but does that mean he's going to want to be the head coach in Indiana? It doesn't necessarily, and frankly he might stick around and be like, yeah, I don't want this gig. And go for something else. So you don't know. I mean, I guess it makes some level of sense that way, but Tom Allen would have had to sign on for this. You're not adding somebody to the staff without Tom Allen's approval. So he must know Justin Fuente, and he must be cool with the idea of bringing him on staff, or else he wouldn't be on staff. I mean, maybe if you're Scott Dolson, you watch the guy and say, okay, I want to see if this is somebody who could take over when I feel like I have to make a move. But he's not there without Tom Allen's approval. So I don't think I would be really surprised if Dolson is bulldozing this and saying, you're hiring Justin Fuente and I'm going to hire him as soon as I have cause, not cause, because Tom Allen wouldn't get fired for cause in a million years. But once I feel like you've lost enough football games and I'm willing to pay your buyout, I'm interested in Justin Fuente. I really highly doubt that. I can't see that on Scott Dolson's part. I feel like Scott's going to give Tom every opportunity, and then when he makes a decision, he makes a decision, and I'm sure he's going to have people on a short list of people he wants to call, but he's not going to push him around on that, I don't think, and force him to hire somebody he doesn't want to hire.
This is not the first time we've seen Indiana do something similar to this, and it was actually in basketball when Dane Fife was added to the staff along with Thad Matta in different ways, but this was a different situation. Sure. This, to me, is an acknowledgement that things are dire, and they are. I mean, you can't say anything other than that. Which it's great that acknowledgement, whether it's actually being made verbally or not, is being made, and the attempt is being made, because football, I say it all the time, it's the engine that pulls the train, people. And if you don't have an engine, you're the caboose. And that's not where you want to be in the new world of football. That's not where you want to be in the new Big Ten. The teams that are coming in are all incredible right now. They're 3 out of the 4 top offensive teams in the country. Which ironically, the Big Ten has the top 3 defensive teams in the country already. So I was talking earlier, what a clash of styles this is going to be next year. That's going to be so fun. We'll talk about the new schedule in a little bit. What's new with the Pacers? Things seem to be good start for them as well.
Yeah, they had their first preseason game last night, lost to Memphis in overtime. Really well played game. Not really well played game. I mean, pretty well played game on their part was and they're in overtime in preseason. I mean, it was clearly that guys were out there really competing. They basically Tyrese Halliburton, they gave him the day off. They gave Daniel Tice the day off. Both of those guys played in FIBA in the World Cup. Obviously, Germany won. So Tice's team and obviously the Americans finished 4th. So Rick just kind of gave those guys the first preseason game off. And Andrew Nembhard was out with a kidney stone, so they had to go their third point guard, and TJ McConnell. McConnell, I thought, played really well, put himself in a good position. He's going to have to fight for minutes, with those 2 guys, but he played exceptional, I thought. Played the first half, 11 points, 8 assists, no turnovers, really sharp game from him. It had some other guys played pretty well. They didn't put the rookies in until halftime, but Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd played really well once they did come off the bench. Walker had, I think, 9 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, hit a couple big threes, and that's really important for him. If he can shoot the ball from outside, that's going to be a big deal. And Ben Shepherd shot the ball really well, 3 threes in the third quarter, and made some big hustle plays, which was a lot what they wanted from him. So I think that's key. If those guys can challenge, those guys can get in there and challenge for rotation spots, I think that's really important. But I think there's going to be a lot of fight for competition, for rotation positions, for minutes.
That's, I think, the best thing the Pacers have going for them. What's most interesting about this camp is they've got 15 guys they believe can play. Nobody's and that's not always the case. There are teams with a lot better top line talent that you're going to expect them to go a lot further. Boston, Milwaukee, they might not have as many guys at the 10 to a 15 spot, but they've obviously, Milwaukee's got Damian Lillard and Giannis, not to mention Chris Middleton and those guys. Boston obviously adds Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, the teams are way more loaded up top, and the Pacers aren't that good there. But they might be one of the deepest teams. They might be one of the teams that I don't know if everybody else has 15 guys that they honestly believe deserve rotation spots, and the Pacers do. So that's I think important for them, and it looks good early. They were pretty competitive. They weren't as good defensively as you wanted to be. They gave up 78 points in the paint to Memphis, and so that's the thing that's got to get better. But they got a lot of guys who can score the ball. They rebounded it pretty well. Hustled, got after it. It's clearly a bunch of guys that are really competing internally, for minutes, rotation positions, starter spots, all that kind of stuff, and that's going to make for a pretty productive camp, I think.
Yeah, the paint is something that I can see, especially early on. You don't know what another team has. You don't have a scouting report, so it's never good to have anything in the negative. But you're not going to be perfect. And like you mentioned, losing in overtime shows the competing now, or the effort to win, the trying to win, which is what you want, and it's all you can ask for. And last year, I think it was a surprise how well that the Pacers ended up playing, and I think that they're going to pick up on that. You've added Obi Toppin, and looking forward to see
Bruce
what
Brown.
he can add to this program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Obi Toppin, Bruce Brown, both of those guys. They didn't have big numbers last night, but I mean, you saw the moments. Obviously Brown, I think, really does make them better on the defensive end. I think you see how far they still have to go, and adding, a couple guys, obviously with him and Walker being a pretty defensive oriented rookie, but a guy that's was a one and done in college, so still has to deal with a much higher level of basketball with guys he's defending. But Brown, I thought had some good moments defensively. I thought he had some good moments in transition. Toppin, really, I mean, the effect of him just rim running is going to be such a big deal. I mean, that's such a big skill he's got, and that fits in well with Halliburton and everything they want to do, pushing the tempo. Obi Toppin's going to score a lot of points. I don't know how well he's going to defend, but he's going to score a lot of points. He's going to rebound a lot, but he's just really good at, when he decides to go in transition, basically when he makes a read at that, the Pacers are going to get the ball, whether it's on a rebound or on a steal or whatever. No one's keeping up with him. I mean, he's like, he's basically like a tight end running seams that nobody can stop. I mean, it's like Travis Kelce out there that just basically he is getting downfield and, beating guys really good at, really good hands in transition. You throw him, a lob, you just, fling it out ahead, and Obi's ahead and nobody's in front of him. That's basically like his big skill. And that's a big deal. It's important for this group, and he can shoot it a little bit from outside. Just really good finisher. Obviously, he's got the body you want at power forward, and they didn't really have anybody built like that with 6'9" size who could shoot outside. Basically, he really fits physically that position and what it's become in the NBA. You still need some size there. You still want to be 6'8", 6'9", but you want to be athletic and able to shoot it from outside, and he's really that guy. And basically, and the only reason they were able to get him easy is he was stuck behind Julius Randle, another all-star at his position with the Knicks, and so he's just a great find for them, easy pickup, and really fits what they want to do really well.
We've got more coming up. Dustin Dopir with the Indy Star is with us. Make sure you give Dustin a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive, but we've got a little more coming up. The Colts with a huge win. That and much more on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
How about the Colts?
Yeah, how about the Colts? I only caught like the last 10 minutes of it. Obviously, Tennessee's not particularly good, but
this is a huge win divisionally.
3 wins already, 3-2 to start. They're in great shape in the division. It's a bad division. It seems like
they 3-0 in the division.
They might be.
They're 2-0. I know they beat Houston and the Titans.
I feel like 2-0. Have they played Jacksonville yet? I think so. They lost to Jacksonville, didn't they? Or I could be wrong.
Is that like a first game?
I think so. Let me look.
Because they lost to the Rams last week. I was up there for that, although they got that game to overtime.
Yeah, they lost to Jacksonville in the opener, beat Houston, beat Baltimore, lost to the Rams, beat Tennessee. Like that's the 3 so far. So they're 2-1 in the South. So they're in a good spot. I mean, Jacksonville obviously has got the tiebreaker, and you look at Jacksonville and think that's the team that should win that division.
Which is odd because what are we, 2 years removed? How far removed from Urban Meyer is Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think 2 years, but they still have Trevor Lawrence. You know, like this is about the time that your number 1 overall pick quarterback should be doing it. You know, and I don't know that he's been as good as you hoped, but he's still good enough. You know, what did he have last night? Let me look here. Or no, not last night, yesterday morning in London. Yeah, he threw for 315 and a touchdown yesterday. You know, like, and ETN was terrific, 136 and 2 touches.
But but last night the Cowboys get smoked by the 49ers, and I forget who the quarterback is.
Yeah,
but he didn't even. He threw for like 165 yards or something.
Who are we talking about?
The 49ers last night.
Oh no, their guy Purdy threw for 252 and 4 TDs. Brock Purdy, Tyrese Halliburton's boy. Yeah, they just smashed them. I mean, this was just nasty.
I couldn't believe that. I was like, what?
Frisco might be
pounding them.
Frisco
Every time I look up the score, the score was 10 points more.
Yeah, they're shellacking everybody. They're 5-0. They've had one competitive game. They beat the Rams 30-23. That's the closest it's been. They smacked the Giants, they smacked the Cardinals, they smacked Dallas, they beat up the Steelers. I mean, Dallas is good. You know, Dallas is pretty good. But they look really
that is a stat right there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is astounding.
That's so wild.
Because first of all, Kansas was considered right above Indiana as far as being the worst football one.
Yeah, let's do that.
Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of Wow Food Group. This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, everybody. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Dopir as well from the Indy Star, as we're coming to you from the Target Center here in Minneapolis, side of the 2023 Big Ten Basketball Media Days. Talking some football right now, and you want to talk about an incredible stat that Fred just put up. Fresh off of Louisville beating Notre Dame, who almost had Ohio State beat, which is a huge win for Louisville, huge win for Jeff Brom. They go where they're 6-0 now. But to see the fact that North Carolina, Kentucky, Duke, UCLA, Louisville, and Kansas are all ranked in football is mind-boggling. And Indiana could not be any further away from that.
Yeah, but, so yeah, all the blue bloods are in, all the basketball blue bloods are in the football top 25 except for Indiana. Just, you know, standard.
And I don't want to,
but yeah, that's not the point.
Dig more dirt onto Indiana, but they've made they've sure made some changes here in the last week, and which is absolutely a showing of they know things are dire, that things are bad, and so which it's great to see the change, but they have this is serious. I don't think people realize how serious of a problem it is when you have a really bad football program that doesn't ever get out of being bad. If you were up and down, you'd have something. But when you stay in the basement, that's not good. Kansas is
bad for a long
I'd have
time.
to look at the stats, but they may be the second losingest program in Division I, just with Indiana below them. I know that at one time that they were down there, but man, they haven't been exactly world beaters the last couple of years, but they've been winning. They've been able to win. They can score points. They're fun to watch. So it can happen anywhere now, and it's going to happen at Indiana, and they're going to have to do whatever they do to make those changes.
Right. It should be noted, Kansas is where Indiana was in 2019-20. Like, I mean, it should be noted that we're not that far removed from, Indiana's high point. I mean, Kansas had a stretch. I mean, I'm looking at their Football Reference page. Remember, they were only 6-7 last year. They went to the Liberty Bowl and they lost. They had a really good start and faded, and some of that had to do with scheduling. They're 5-1 now, but also in that case, it does have to do with scheduling as well. They've got some nice wins, but they haven't gotten to the thick of Big 12 play really yet. I mean, Texas hammered them, 40-14. Again, they beat BYU, they beat Illinois, they beat Central Florida. These are nice wins. I'm not trying to downplay that, but they could have a similar scenario to last year. I mean, let me look at this. Their schedule results for last year, they were 6-7. I think they might have started 5-0 or something like that. I mean, it was they were 5-0, and then they lost. Then
they probably had to play Texas, Oklahoma State.
They beat West Virginia, Houston, Duke, Iowa State. They were looking great at 5-0. Then they got TCU, Oklahoma, Baylor, got beat by all of them. Got a nice win against Oklahoma State, but then lost to Texas Tech, Texas, Kansas State, Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl. So, I mean, obviously they could go south, and Kansas, they you go back to the Mangino era, obviously the crazy 2007, the wildest college football season of my lifetime when they won the Orange Bowl. But the following year, Mangino goes 5-7. I think he had some other stuff go wrong. He gets fired. They go Turner Gill. They go 5-19 in 2 seasons. They go Charlie Weiss. They win 6 games in 3 years. David Beatty wins 5 games in 4 seasons, somewhere like 40 losses. Les Miles doesn't work. He goes 3-18. So Kansas was in the doldrums. Lance Leipold was a great hire. He goes 2-10 and then he goes 6-7. I mean, that's really good. I'm not going to put that aside, but I mean, remember, you're not talking about the too distant past where Tom Allen was what Lance Leipold is now. It's not the too distant past there. So, I mean, it's bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they might end up having to fire him. But my point is they probably will have to end up firing him in the not too distant future. But that's how this goes. I mean, it is not infrequent that you make a hire, you shoot up, you win some games, and you're like, wow, this is the best hire ever. This guy is putting, this program in a place it's never been before. Look at all the things they're doing. And catch a couple bad breaks. Next thing you know, you're 2-10. It moves fast for programs like this that are basketball or oriented, dominant, aren't used to a lot of success. It doesn't take a lot to go wrong for you to end up.
Like Notre Dame, they are out of the college football playoff hunt now. They're done. They have no chance to get in there, which is actually great for other teams because a team like Louisville, they're not gonna. I don't see them being able to do that. Well, you never know, though. If they run the table and win the ACC, there is that possibility. And the ACC is not exactly a gauntlet to get through. They will, I think, have to play Clemson.
They would have to play them in the in an ACC.
Let me go ahead and say this. Louisville avoids the 3 toughest teams outside of themselves on the regular season schedule. They don't play North Carolina, they don't play Clemson, and they don't play Florida State. They do play Miami, so they avoid 3.
Well, but they would have to play them at one point in the
ACC championship. But that's the only, because they don't do divisions anymore in the ACC.
Oh, I was going to say, because they used to be in the same division as Clemson.
Right.
Yeah, they're divisionless.
Okay, so that's one versus two now at this point.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you'd end up dealing probably with Florida State in the final, and that's obviously determining whether or not you're a playoff team if Florida State ends up staying where they are. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, they've got Pitt this week. They've got Duke. It's not an easy game. Virginia and Virginia Tech, they shouldn't have too much of a problem with. Miami, and they've obviously got Kentucky, in their in-state rivalry game at the end of the year. But they're in really good shape. Miami's going to be staggered after that loss. That was something. I mean, man, good Lord, what they did against Georgia Tech. I mean, absolutely the worst.
And that is,
oh my
Georgia
Lord.
Tech is.
Rough. Yeah.
Is that may be the biggest shocking loss of the season.
Well, especially how it happened. I mean, you've seen this, right? Because you had to figure out about it. Oh, you don't know? Oh my God, Jim. Oh my God, you got to look this up. This is going to blow your mind because you're going to hate this. No, so Miami had the ball, 3rd down, 45 seconds left. Georgia Tech has no timeouts, can't stop the clock. They run a
ball and fumble it.
They don't kneel it. They run the ball. They fumble. Like 3 plays. They fumble the ball at like Georgia Tech's like 25. So Georgia Tech picks up the ball with about 30 seconds left at their own 25. They score a touchdown. Like
this is the old New York Jets play.
What's that?
This is the old New York Jets play from back in the 80s, I think. The same situation. They didn't have to do anything, and the quarterback, they bobble a handoff, and it gets picked up, and it's like, are you kidding me?
They just had to kneel. They just had to kneel. I mean, it was over. Like, Georgia Tech could not stop the clock. All Miami had to do.
And I don't understand why in the world you would not do that in that situation.
Yeah, I haven't seen an answer yet from Mario Cristobal. I mean, he said, well, obviously we should have knelt the ball, but I don't know why.
No kidding.
So yeah, that one, that's going to knock them on their socks, back on their heels for a while. I mean, like
that's the only thing worse this season than Indiana's fourth down call against Louisville. That's another thing. Louisville beats Notre Dame. That's a team Indiana, I'm not saying should have beaten, could have beaten because they should have taken them to overtime.
Yeah,
at the very minimum.
Certainly had a shot. So yeah, I mean, this thing this year is definitely like there's a bit of a reset. I think it's making for a pretty fun year.
It is. I love
adding teams that haven't been in that playoff. It feels like you've just had this handful of teams that are operating above everybody else for the last 5 or 6 years. And there's been some rotation there. Obviously, Clemson was the team a couple years back, and they've faded a little bit. Alabama, Bama could end up being in the playoff. I mean, that's not out of the question, I don't think, still. But they don't look great. Bama looks very, very beatable, and I would be stunned if they go to the SEC title game and beat Georgia. Like, I can't imagine that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're in a position, coming in the first weekend of December, that if they win, they're in. I don't think they win. I don't think they beat a Georgia, presuming Georgia wins out, and I presume Georgia's going to win out. But, you look at, like, obviously you still got Michigan there and all that, but, you look at, Florida State being back is interesting. I mean, Notre Dame, even though they're out of the playoff run, has been an interesting team. Oklahoma's back in it. Penn State's in it. Washington, Oregon's got a massive game.
How big of a win was that for Oklahoma? And what a great game that was.
Humongous win for Oklahoma. Puts them right back in it. Like USC still hanging around. They had a ridiculous one against Arizona on Saturday night. That game.
Wow, that is not a good look for the Trojans.
It was not pretty. They pulled it off, but it was not pretty at all. They are very, very beatable. Somebody's going to beat them, I presume, but they're still there. They're still undefeated. So they still got a shot. North Carolina's undefeated. Louisville's undefeated. You have a lot of teams that have a chance still to be really interesting. The last ride of the Pac-12 is great. It's been every bit. It might be the best football league in the country, just looking at the kind of being played.
Well, it's
and how fun
it's weird.
Yeah, it's weird.
But they're deeper. They're definitely deep, where the Big Ten is just top heavy, and then
the Big Ten is as top heavy as they've been in a long time. I mean, like, it's a tough deal on these NBC primetime games where it's like Michigan, Minnesota. Like, okay, just it's not even fair. Like it's Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Colorado, which besides all the fanfare, they're
decent.
They're a good team.
They're not
They've done some good stuff, and then you've got Washington could be the number one team in the country.
Sure, no, absolutely. I mean, again, Washington, Oregon's going to be a great game on Saturday.
That's this week too.
Game 3:30 kick. That's going to be a really good looking one. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And that's going to be a good time. USC Notre Dame's this weekend too. I mean, Notre Dame can win that game. Again, that doesn't put them back in the playoff.
That would be the death knell for USC. You cannot lose to a non-playoff team like Notre Dame, I don't think.
No, not in this stretch. I mean, that would put USC out as far as playoff is concerned for the most part. I mean, if they would come back and did they get Washington and Oregon or not? Let me look here. Let me look at the USC schedule. They do get Washington and Oregon. I mean, if they lose to Notre Dame and then run the table after that, I think they're still in it because you got Utah, Cal, Washington, Oregon, UCLA. That's a gauntlet. If they come out of that 11-1 and you go into a Pac-12 title game and have a chance to beat, one of those teams again, then they get a crack at it. I mean, I think they get a crack at it, but it would be a significant loss for USC for sure. I mean, they would.
The worst thing about this season is it's a 4-team playoff and not the 12. This of all seasons, this is the season where you want 12 teams in there.
Yeah, this will be a fun 12-team playoff. I mean, I'm still an 8-team guy. I feel like 8 has always been the number that made sense, but they bypassed that. Went from 8 always made sense to me, especially when we were talking about conferences when it would be 6 champs, 2 wild cards. That would make a lot of sense. But a 12-team playoff this year would be a lot of fun.
And one other thing, as far as rankings, if you're playing, let's say it's Ohio State and they're ranked 4th, and you're maybe not ranked or you're ranked 20th, and you beat that team, to me, they deserve to be number 4. Because if you thought that team was number 4 and they got beat by this team who you thought was 21, that just says you were wrong. So put them where they belong, because there's so much that starts from perception at the beginning of the season that is just off of perception of people thinking that this team is this thinking this team is that. And it's not based on merit. It's based on, what they did last year or what I think. And so that's why I'm like going, hey man, just replace them.
But that's the basis of college football. That's the thing. So I've been a voter and it's tough, when basketball is so much easier to vote on than football. For one thing, if you're a voter, I'd say 8 or 9 out of 10 voters are beat writers, and so what that means is you're covering one team. That's your job. That's what you're there for. And the rest of your Saturday, if you pick, you get some time, whatever. Like last year when I was voting to start the season, before they moved me over to Pacers, I had to drive down to Bloomington, cover the game, write some stories, drive back. And so I was watching more Pac-12 than anything else. I got some sense of Washington and teams like that because they were on when I got home, because I could sit up at night, watch another game after I got back from Bloomington. But you don't get to watch football all day. You don't. Number one. Number two, it's perception because they only play 12 games and you don't get to go to all their practices in August and see how well they do. You get to go to one team's practices, the team that you get paid to cover. So at the end of the day, that's what college football is you're guessing. You're always guessing because they don't play each other. They don't all play each other. You got to guess how good everybody is. So that's your perception, but your perception changed. Your perception changes every week. I don't think if you ask a single, college football voter, they don't think they know everything. They just got this vote and they weren't going to pass it up because it's a cool thing to have. But nobody that's voting in the AP top 25s thinks they are the biggest college football genius that ever walked. And they know everybody how good he is. You're guessing every week, you are. You're just doing the best you can. You look at some scores, you watch some highlights. I mean, you don't have time to come home and rewatch everybody's game, but by the time your ballots do, you don't. So you do the best you can. And so it's it is all perception. Your perception changes. You're basically allowing everybody to change your perception, and you're not acting as if your perception was golden because it's you were wrong. Yeah, no surprise. You were going to be wrong. I mean, you look back at your preseason ballot, you're never going to be proud of it. Like you're never going to look back and say, man, I'm right there. And to like close this up, I mean, like Kansas State, remember K-State's people jumped me all of last year, right? From the beginning, and they ended up going to the Big 12 title game. So they were right and I was wrong. No doubt about it. Unquestionably. And they were all over me from game one.
The fans are always going to be
they're going to be on top of their team. But at the end of the day, like I didn't know how good they were. I didn't. I really didn't. And nobody else did either. They weren't like, it wasn't like I was the only one that kept them out of the top 25. They weren't a top 25 team to start the season.
At the very least, I think that if you beat a team, you have got to be ranked in front of them.
You should be ranked in front of them generally. But in early in
unless
the season, you're both
it's
undefeated.
a Georgia Tech Miami thing.
For the most part, but if you go down the season and it's November and you're 7 or you're 5-3 and you go out and beat a team that's 8-0, you can't jump the 8-0 team when you're now 6-3 and they're 8-1. Like you can't.
But
do
I'm
that.
sure gonna drop that team.
I'm gonna drop that team significantly, but they're still 8-1. And you're still 6-3. And so
there's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of facets, a lot of ins and outs.
A lot of ins and outs.
See, you're the only one that gets that reference. I use it a lot, but nobody gets it.
I'm the only one on this that gets Lebowski references. No chance.
Love it. Brother, love you as well. I hope you have a great rest of your week, you and Maxine. And boy, it looks enjoyable sitting out on the swing today.
It makes it look like I'm in a tropical paradise when I'm really just in Indianapolis. So, they definitely add.
You are in tropical paradise compared to where I am.
Yeah, that's true. Compared to where
that.
You are.
Dustin Dopir, can't thank you enough, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Make sure you give Dustin a follow on social media and make sure you're a subscriber to the Indy Star. Keep local papers alive. Much more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Coming to you live from the Target Center in Minneapolis, site of the 2023 Big Ten Basketball Media Days. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
All right. Excuse me. It's just me and you the rest of the way.
Just me and you. Just you and me. Is that for an hour?
Yeah, because we started at 11, or excuse me, started at 9, going till right before 11.
Greg couldn't reschedule, I guess.
No, I tried to get him to do 10 o'clock, and he said it doesn't work with this thing, and he'll come on
I
next
didn't
week.
think so. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I'll be right back.
He would have been great to talk about the Colts, man. Well, I'll run right back. All right. I'm just go take a peek out here. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? I'll be right back. Well, people that are listening, tell him I said I'll be right back. Get you a chair because I'm sitting on this side.
Oh, look, it's Mike DeCourcy.
Boom. Can you still hear me?
Yes, sir. Is that Mr. Mike DeCourcy with you?
That is.
There we go. And I guess he
might
won't
not
be able
like
to hear me,
that.
correct? Jim, give him the one microphone and you use the headset if you can.
Yeah.
Because unless you want to hand it off, you could do either way. It's up to you.
I'm going to have to do that right now.
Okay, that's fine.
With
All
the box.
All right, here we go, guys. Plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Rebesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Target Center here, site of the 2023 Big Ten Basketball Media Days, of course, and Mr. Big Ten, Mike DeCourcy from the Big Ten Network, from the Sporting News, is gracious enough to join us here on this Monday instead of the Tuesday normally. Mike, great to see you, first of all.
Well, it's great to see you, but I don't think that that Jim Jackson and Red Grange and probably about 10,000 other athletes and Caitlin Clark now would appreciate me being established as Mr. Big Ten. I think that
I don't care. It's what we think. And I think the fans will agree. Today is all the women are all on the dais today, which, first of all, these changes have just come in the last 2 years, probably, right? I mean, last year, maybe they had, didn't they have the schools on the same days last year?
If I'm trying to remember last year, but I think they split it and had men, women from particular schools on one day and then particular schools on the other. I know that it wasn't all women and all men like it is this time.
Yeah, I was confused. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I go, this is different, but regardless, it doesn't matter. There's still so much to talk about with the Big Ten. Since we're the Women's Day today, Iowa picked to win the league again.
Shocking.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark, of course. If I was Indiana and the Indiana players, I'd be a little miffed because they bring a lot back. They did not get the end, and that probably put a bad taste in some people's mouth. But that should be great fodder for motivation.
I think the fact that they lost some great talent too. Rookie of the year or one of the rookies of the year, all rookie for the Indiana Fever. So that's a significant loss, and they're going to have to replace that. But I think honestly, Caitlin Clark's persona is so strong now that when she finishes, and technically I think she has a COVID year after this if she wants to come back again. I'm not sure that she would, but if she wanted to come back in 2024-25, she could. But even let's say whenever she finishes, I think the ghost of Caitlin Clark is going to get Iowa first place votes in the preseason women's basketball media.
The ghost of Caitlin Clark may be preseason player of the year
yes.
when she's not even here. And yes, she does have an additional year that she could come back, which if she did that, I'm assuming she would obliterate whatever records that she hasn't touched now, not just at Iowa, but in the Big Ten. She's been probably the most dominant player in the Big Ten that I recall. I mean, not that I've followed intently women's basketball for that long, but when someone is that dominant, it just sticks out.
There have been some great women's basketball players in this league, tremendous, Michigan and Maryland and so many others. But it's not just that she's a great player. There have been other, like I said, there have been other great players. It's that she's a great player and that it has captured the imagination, broken through to a new level of audience, which is great because, one of the problems that I've always felt women's basketball has had, and some people push back on this, is running the season absolutely concurrently with the men. And so, the men's game was, they were doing Lou Alcindor when you didn't even have a league. So they had something already established that people would say, okay, in March, I'm watching this. And Now you come along and you're doing it at the same time, maybe different days, sometimes the same days. And it's just hard for people to jam all that in. The great Frank DeFord, the late great Frank DeFord, the greatest sports writer of all time, once did a commentary, I believe it was on ESPN, where he suggested that they should move their season up 1 month and play their tournament in February. And there's nothing in February. And there's the Daytona 500 and there's the Olympics every 4 years and the Super Bowl now. At that time, it wasn't. But there's just not much going on, and there would be a lot more room. But she broke through even that. And that's why she's been so important for women's basketball, to show people, look, it's a fabulous game. It's a tremendous game. But for me, it's hard for me to get the time to watch because I'm so consumed with men's. That's my job. But maybe for others, it's not as hard. Maybe for others, it's just they need to see this is a fabulous game. It's the same thing as what I wrote about last week when I talked about the people who are complaining about Taylor Swift at NFL and being shown on TV while,
You're a Swiftie?
I do like her music, but I'm not an aficionado. But whether it's her or Lionel Messi bringing people into MLS, we see these audiences coming into sports that they haven't traditionally followed, or leagues that they haven't traditionally followed. And what happens is, some people are going to do it, and then when Taylor Swift's not Travis Kelce's girlfriend anymore, if indeed they are, when that goes away, they might go away. But somebody in that group is going to say, that was really cool. I love that. I'm doing this a lot now. And that's what's happening with Caitlin and women's basketball. I guarantee you there are going to be people who watch this March, even if, and I'm not rooting for this, but even if they get eliminated early, people are going to say, hey, last year that Final Four was really cool. Even when they got when they got beaten in the title game, it was still fabulous. Okay, she's gone, but I'm going to watch. Or let's say next year when she's not playing and she's in WNBA, they'll come back next year. That's you have to sample it and understand why other people have been into it for a long time before you can understand it and get into it.
And it's going to be interesting to see her in the WNBA because the competition, it's just like playing in an all-star game every time with defense, because normally there is no defense in all-star games. And you got people saying, hey, rookie, and that she's probably never encountered that experience.
She hasn't, but there was a basketball player at Davidson who spent most of his time tearing up Southern Conference defenses. Yes, exactly. And then he got into the NCAAs and showed he could do it against them. And then he got into the NBA and showed that not only could he do it against them, but he could change the entire game. So it may be a little rough early. She's not as physical as some of the players in the WNBA, and she probably won't be, but people have been talking about that with Steph for literally 15 years in the NBA. He's not as powerful. He's more powerful now than he was in 2007 or 2008, but he's not as powerful as a lot of the guards that are trying to stop him from doing what he does, but can't.
And the Big Ten will be growing, as we know. I'm not sure with UCLA and USC. I don't recall them having power programs on the women's side, but that is something that they will probably grow because you have to keep up with the Joneses, and that gives them an opportunity to grow that they maybe didn't look at before. And it's not just that sports, all sports. I think this is going to raise the level of all sports across in the Big Ten, which is tremendous.
They have had in the past. I mean, Ann Myers, one of the early greats, she was at UCLA.
Don Drysdale.
Cheryl Miller. These two people have a great connection to Indiana, too. Ann Myers was drafted by the Pacers back in the day, and I think she did some TV work for the Pacers as well. And, of course, Cheryl Miller is Reggie's sister, and Cheryl Miller is one of the great women's players of all time. So, they've had great teams. Candace Parker, I believe, went to USC. I may be wrong on Candace. I think she went to Tennessee, but there was another great player that came out of USC. Now I'm forgetting that was more recent than Cheryl. So they have had great players in the past. I'm not sure that they have had quite the programs in the past decade that they had then. But it's a chance for them to up the game a little bit.
Big Ten Media Days, obviously it's opportunity that most of us don't get. We're going to be able to talk to virtually any coach we want to, any primetime player that we want to. And for you as a writer, which you're with the Big Ten, you get a little more access, but this is gold. I mean, there is so much that someone like you, I know, takes away from this. What is these media days mean to someone like you?
Well, I think it's great because it's a chance to connect with people that I've known or meet people that I haven't known. I mean, obviously, I've known Tom Izzo for 25 years or so, but then there are people that are going to come into the league as players, of course. It's a chance for me to get to sit down with some players and get a feel for them as people, as well as what they're expecting for their basketball season. And there are new coaches, new coach at Penn State men's basketball. I've spoken with Mike Rhodes in the past, but I don't think I've met him in person because I've never happened to be at a game or a tournament site or whatever where he was where we conversed. So this is a chance to meet people as well as do that. So I think it's great for the league that they do this. It's obviously great programming as well for Big Ten Network for them to be able to talk about the men's and women's seasons and look forward to the basketball that we're going to have. That it's going to be great again. When we were doing preseason projections for the Big Ten, we all do these things. You say to yourself, well, it can't be as good as it was last year or the year before. And then every year you start looking at like, okay, well, where does the line of good teams run out? And it always seems to fall down around 8 or 9, somewhere in there. And you start thinking, well, they could probably make it if they had a great year. And so you're wind up in the same place. Now, I mean, you bring in UCLA and USC and Oregon next year and maybe Washington if they can get themselves together. And then maybe that line even goes deeper than it has over the past 5 or 6 years.
We'll take a break, and if Mike's got a few more minutes, we'll come back and talk about the men's side of things, which they'll be here tomorrow. You're listening to us live from the Target Center here in Minneapolis, side of the Big Ten Basketball Media Days. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. All right, you got about 3 minutes, Jim. You still hear me? 3 minutes till we come back, yeah.
And then I have one more after that, right?
Yes, you'll have one more break after that.
All right, so, okay, perfect. What is the actual end time?
It's a few. We'll end a few minutes before 11, like I think 10:56 or something.
Thank you. You just get in this morning?
Yeah, just flew in. It was like a 7:20 flight from Indy.
I think Casey Bartley from Purdue Rivals with flight. Who was it? A few Sun Country here. You never just even heard of it. We're out of here. It's similar to Spirit, but without the bad experience.
Yeah.
I was like, good. It was really inexpensive. You actually got something to drink. Wow. I was shocked. She came and asked me something to drink. I'm like, I was waiting for, you have a credit card? And I'm like, just have a Coke.
What airline
it's
did
like
you
that
take?
commercial that's on TV now with AT&T.
Oh yeah, AT&T, yeah.
With my TV crush, Lily.
What airline did you
He
take,
was born in
Jimbo?
Tehran, Iran. It's wild.
Well, when you have crushes, you look stuff up. Or you're really bored.
Jim, did you change something with your microphone? Your level all of a sudden got a lot.
Oh, I dropped it.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I was just
What
dropping it
airline
down
did
my
you say
leg.
you took instead of Spirit?
Sun Country.
Sun Country. Okay, I've heard of them, but I've never been on their plane.
I had never heard of them.
They're very
But
small.
I'm
airline.
telling you, it was great. inexpensive. I couldn't take it back because I don't think they flew on. I'm flying back immediately after tomorrow on Delta.
Yeah.
I wish the guys they had, because boy, was it a lot cheaper. All right, chill out,
About
Rudy.
40 seconds still.
Oh,
Lisa Leslie is who I was thinking about.
oh, yeah. How about your boy Matt Canada? Got to be your
Here we go.
favorite guy, right?
Fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Hank's Pizza Mac. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Target Center here in Minneapolis, site of the Big Ten Basketball Media Days, and fortunate to have Mike DeCourcy with us from the Sporting News, as well as the Big Ten Network, which you'll be doing a lot of TV work, I understand, probably in the next 2 days.
No, I'm here to do background for future TV work, as well as for stuff for Sporting News. But they usually have someone like Bardo up on the podium with Dave Revson and sometimes Andy Katz. But I've been
Pizzo,
there.
I saw Rick is up
Yes,
there already.
Rick will be there. Yeah, I've been here 15 years, and that's not been part of my assignment.
Well, you're probably lucky. There's too much other things to do. And that's probably better conversation than asking about Matt Canada and your Steelers. Former Indiana coach. I think he was an OC at one time. He never played.
Yeah.
Which is shocking. It's kind of a Mike Leach thing, but the difference is Mike Leach was really, really good offensive mind, was a superb offensive mind, and he was funny as hell along the way. But just as a Steelers fan, you got to be pulling your hair out.
It's challenging. It's frustrating. The Steelers have had Matt as their offensive coordinator for, I think this is I'm trying to remember, 21, 22, 20. So this is his third season. And in 2020, I don't think he was yet the OC. I think it was Randy Fichtner's last year. So he's been the offensive coordinator for 2 and change. And in the time that he has been offensive coordinator, every team in the league has had multiple 400-yard offensive games. Steelers have had none, zero. I mean, that's just staggering when you think about it, that they have had zero while everybody else has had multiple. I don't know the time frame on how many, like that everybody's had 4. It might have gone beyond him, so I'm not going to blame him. I'm not going to put that on him. But multiple is accurate, and they've had none. There are just so many numbers out there. They're near the bottom in every major offensive category: scoring yards, passing yards, rushing. They're bad at all of it, and they continue to stay the same course. I think the biggest problem with that is, in my thought was that the reason they returned him for this year was to give the quarterback the opportunity to not have to learn something new. And I think that in the end that it's setting him back to be going against defenses that don't have to work as hard, because defending what the Steelers do to them comes more easily. I think that is setting back Kenny Pickett, who was a first-round pick in the 2022 draft.
That sounds like Ohio State acknowledging that they practiced maybe 5 of Indiana's running plays in the week preparing for them this season. But we'll move on from there. Men's media day is tomorrow, of course. Michigan State, Purdue are the 2 names that just jump off at the top. Who's in that third slot?
Well, I think that probably the most common team that's mentioned for that third spot is Maryland. They bring back Jameer Young, so they're really rock solid with the ball in their hands. They have multiple guys around him who are all very capable players. They lost some talent, to transfer off of last year's team, which made the tournament and won a game. Played in an 8-9 game against West Virginia and advanced before losing to Alabama in the second round. So they lost one key player off of that, who's now at Villanova. But they still have some really good, solid players there, some promising big guys. So there's some talent there. What's interesting to me about the Michigan State-Purdue circumstance is that if you ask me who's going to win this league and who would I put my house on winning the league, it would be Purdue. Absolutely. Because they've got everything they need. They should be better than they were last year. But if you ask me which team in the league is most likely to win the national championship, it would be Michigan State, because they've got the level of the guys, the difference-making guys. Now, they have to become difference makers. I don't mean like the really good college guys like Tyson Walker, A.J. Hoggard. Those guys are really good college players, and they'll have a future in pro basketball somewhere after this, maybe in the NBA, maybe somewhere else, probably in the NBA. But the first-round picks that you need to have in order to win it every year. I keep going back to this every year since '87, since your Indiana Hoosiers won it without a first round pick. Everybody else since. That's a long history. And so when I look at a team like Purdue, I look at it and I'm like, I'm not sure. Is Roosevelt Colvin an NBA guy? Well, I don't know. He wasn't rated that highly coming out of high school, like in terms of like he's gonna. But maybe they missed on him. Maybe they missed on him like they did Zach. I mean, like they did a couple of years ago. Not Zach, but now I'm blanking on.
Michigan State.
No, for Purdue.
Ivy?
Yes, Jaden Ivey. Yeah, maybe they missed on him like they missed on Jaden Ivey. But what happened in Europe suggested maybe. But until I see that, I feel hesitant to say that they could do it. The same with Michigan. A lot of Kansas. A lot of Kansas people. A lot of Kansas is number one people. But when I pick a number one team, I'm not talking about like who's going to be number one in the polls. I don't even care. When I pick a number one team in the preseason, that's who I'm saying that's the team that's going to win it. Now, I'm not right most of the time. Most of us aren't. But that's the one that I say that's the one I believe can win it. And I don't know that Kansas has that player either. Just as I'm not sure Purdue has, I'm not sure that Kansas does, but I'm pretty sure that Michigan State has maybe too. With Carr, that adds another component to that. So I think that they have the ability to do it, and it's been since 2000 or 2002, if you want to give the Maryland Terrapins their due, but it's a long way.
Another Indiana reference there.
Oh, sorry about that. That's a negative one to some respects, but that's a long time either way. Even if you want to give it to Maryland, and the teams you're bringing in, they've been to the Final Four since, but they haven't won one either. So this is a conference that has been fabulous at basketball for a very long time, but hasn't been able to get that final, hurdle to conquer that final hurdle and win a national championship.
That's a unique stat that I did not know about not having a number one. Yeah. Indiana actually has two unique stats from there. They are also the last team to win a national championship that does not have names on the back of their jerseys.
That is somewhat true.
Kansas did change.
Kansas, Kansas, I believe that year was home. It's crazy. Home, they had the names on. Road, they didn't. And they were the road team in the final. So I'm pretty sure that they did not, when Danny Manning and the Miracles won it, I believe they did not have theirs.
I think they do on both now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That they've gotten past that. I'm still a believer that, especially now in the NIL era, there's no reason not to have names on your jersey. It's not, and it's, the idea, like, whenever coaches would say, I want you to play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. I'm like, you know what? If you're a great coach, I think you should be able to pull that off. I don't think that's that tough because we've got 30 years of history that show that you can do it.
And I responded on a board post the other day, and this was in high school, but I said, we had their names on our back of our jerseys. I said, do you know the only time that I thought about it is when they first handed it to them. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Other than that, it was never a thought because I was worried about getting my head taken off, not about what was on the top of the back of my jersey. So I think that is the biggest load. And I think it's old school thinking.
Yes.
These guys are playing to win.
Yes.
The fact that the name's on the back of their jersey, it has zero relevance to what is going on in the game, going on in the practice, what they're thinking about. These guys are putting in hours and hours of work, whether it's on the court or wherever. So, I'm like, okay, get over it, guys. They tried to do that with football. They took the names off for like a year, and that did not work at all. So
I am a huge fan of tradition in college sports. I love the candy striped pants. I love the mop lady.
It actually started with the swim team.
There you go. I love the mop lady coming down the hall, and I love no matter what school I go to, if they're showing me a video of all the great players in their past, it gets me a little bit. I feel it. Even I'm not a fan, of any particular school, but it gets me because I love the game and I love its tradition. I go to Kentucky and I see that. If I go to I go to a school that has great tradition and their pregame hype video doesn't have any tradition in it, I'm like, you guys don't know what you're doing. You have to, you've got this great All-American and this guy that, that happened to be like a fan favorite and all the rest. And this moment where you guys shot a buzzer beater in and won whatever big game, and you're not showing that to your fans to get them hyped, you're missing the point. So I'm a big believer in that. But the one thing I'm not a fan of is this idea that you have to have no names on your jerseys because Indiana's never had them or Penn State football's never had them or whomever. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a tradition. That's a bad habit.
The best tradition is winning. Just the old Al Davis line. It's one of the greatest. Just win, baby. Just win. And that is the greatest tradition. And if you're winning, that's what people care about. That's what they focus on. And as you mentioned, NIL, you want to sell some jerseys? I guarantee you will sell more jerseys with names on them because people may buy the same number 4 jersey because one was Victor Oladipo and one's somebody else. There's just options, which I didn't mean to turn this into a discussion on that, but it's just one of those things that I'm like, Indiana, there was a lot of flack on the board when Indiana wore the black jerseys in football a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, who cares? Oh, those are Purdue colors. I'm like, no, that's a neutral color, man. Everybody does that. I'm like, and who cares? I'm like, is it really that big of a deal?
If they were black and gold jerseys, that would be Purdue colors for sure. That is definitely a Purdue color. But
I said Notre Dame is like one of the only schools that I can see where black just would not work for them.
I don't think it would work. No, I don't think that would work for them. But you never know. I mean, if you put some, now if black and gold there would look, black and green. I don't know. I'd have to see it, but I have my doubts.
Getting back to basketball, there are several teams, Illinois, Ohio State, that we don't know a lot, Indiana, that has made a lot of additions, that we know that there's a lot of talent there. They've got talent coming back with Xavier Johnson, Trey Galloway, guys like that, wondering what CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks, they're going to grow with Malik Renew. So we just don't know. And so we just don't know what those teams are going to be like, how they're going to gel and play out. We'll find out, but that's going to be fun looking into this season.
One of the interesting things about that is that when you think about it, like if you have talent, you're probably going to do okay. Like, because last year, Illinois is a great example. Illinois comes and they bring in Matthew Meyer and they bring in Terrence Shannon. And they bring in some really good freshmen. And they had some guys who were remaining players, who were good, solid players. And even though they never fit together, they never gelled, they never really connected, there were still moments when the talent got them through, or they did connect for just that night. Maybe the way the opponent played them, or maybe they all happened to like each other that day, or whatever it was. But there was still enough for them to have a season that got them into the tournament. Was it a disappointment? Yes. Was it frustrating? Yes. Do they want to go through that again? Not at all. They want now for this team to be more fluid and more connected. You know, Terrence Shannon, a player that at times looked to be, someone that needed to play harder for Illinois than, and I think that, like, if he comes back with the idea that Illinois is the first, then he will fulfill all the people. Today's media poll has him as a first teamer, almost a unanimous. I wouldn't have voted for him because I want to see it. I know how talented he is, but I want to see him become the leader that he's capable of being. Because if he is, Illinois is going to be another of those teams that are fighting with Michigan State and Maryland and Purdue for the first spots in this league. I believe that Wisconsin has a chance to have a really good year. The one thing that is that when I said if you have talent, the one thing that can interrupt that, and we saw it last year with Wisconsin when Tyler Wall got hurt, they were a completely different team. They don't make it. Ohio State, they were really good the first 6 weeks. Zed Key gets hurt, not good at all the last 8 or 10. I mean, they were really not good. They were 5-15 in the league. But Zed's back. He should be healthy. They've got a chance to be very good. So health is a really important factor. It's the one. There's two factors here: talent and health. If you have talent, you're going to be okay. If you have, but you have to have health with that. If you have talent, health, and connection, then you're up there, you're fighting with the teams that we know will have those things. We know Michigan State's going to have it. We know Purdue's going to have it. But if you put those three components together, you can be at least in their neighborhood. And being in their neighborhood is a good place to be.
Speaking of Indiana, they have a very different team this year, not just in personnel, but the type of personnel. This is not going to be an offense that is run through Trace Jackson Davis or anyone, period, any one person. It's not going to go through Khalil Ware. It's not going to go through Malik Renew. It's not going to go through Mackenzie Mbako or even Xavier probably. He's the guy with the ball in his hands, but unless someone really establishes himself, I think.
Well, it won't be like last year or the last several years because there are only so many guys with Trace's, especially now. There are only so many guys with Trace's low post ability on every level. He had it all in the low post. He was a great passer out of there. He was a phenomenal finisher. Great at bouncing it into better positions in the post. He did everything down there. And those guys come along. I mean, the last one IU had probably was Jared Jeffries. There just aren't very many that can do the things that they could do in the low post. But that also opens you up to more different ways to score. I think that it's possible that it could run through one of those gentlemen that you mentioned. Mbako might be the one who becomes the most obvious candidate, and then everybody else plays off it. I mean, obviously it's going to start with Xavier Johnson and his ability to run the point. But it usually helps to have someone that like this, like when we're struggling to get something going, or we're starting to look at the opposing team's run. We want to get it to this person in this spot, so something he can make it happen for us, even if it's not a basket. And it usually helps to, at what I usually refer to as a first option. It really helps to have that player. You don't have to have it to be successful. Florida 2006 and 7 never had a first option. They just had options. So you don't have to have that, but it does help to have it because it does help prevent runs. It does help give your team stability, because even if there's a first option, that doesn't mean that the second, third, and fourth options aren't getting plenty of action and plenty of opportunities to score. So it'd be probably best for IU if they can find someone in that grouping that can be the guy that they want to go to in those tough spots. And I would say that over the course of the first month or so of practice and then the exhibition games, those things kind of sort themselves out. And players know, like, they want, because a lot of times, like if there is a first option like a Trace, it makes everybody else look better. Even though they might get a few less shots because it's going to end up in Trace's hands, I'm going to get more good looks because we have Trace and everybody's diving at him. So players know, and they'll gravitate toward that. They won't gravitate toward that if a coach is forcing it and the player that they're forcing it toward isn't capable of handling it.
And I'm not suggesting that this is the case, but how important is it for someone like Mike Woodson to convince Mackenzie Mbako, whose goal is to not be in Bloomington next year, and that's not a negative. He wants to be in the league, but to convince him that, hey, the best way for you to get there is to make this team better.
Yes, I don't think he did that already once with Jalen a year ago. So I don't, I can't say it's not tough because I don't know Mackenzie, but if Mackenzie is a sharp young basketball player, he will recognize that the player who accepts that and doesn't listen to the person who says he needs shots or touches or whatever. If you are a success, if you have the goods, the jumping, the running, the height, the length, and all of that, if you're a successful team player, they're going to see that. These guys are remember, these are the scouts for the best league on the planet. They don't care how many points you score unless your job is to score points. If it is and you don't, then that's a problem. But if your job, and I don't, again,
Giannonobi comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. They see it. They know that they understand the game better than the guy who's whispering, you need touches, you need shots. They understand what makes successful teams. Now, Mackenzie Mbako probably isn't going to be a guy that goes into the league and is expected to score 20-plus points a game. Maybe he grows into that. I don't know. But he probably, the way his game is built and the way he's built, that's probably not what what they probably are going to want to see from him is a guy who can do everything. Guard, rebound, handle the ball, pass it, make shots. They're going to want to see everything from him. And all that comes into play in terms of commitment to team. If you do all of those things because you want to make IU better and have a great season and get to the Final Four and all of that, like the scouts are really smart, but they'll also, they also understand there's emotion involved. It's not that so much that they're emotional. They understand there's emotion involved in the game of basketball. And if you contribute to those things at the college level, and you have all the goods that I talked about before, then there's a good chance you're going to contribute to those at a professional level. If you're not a committed team player, like they can see that. There was a player I covered once, I don't need to name him, but there was a player I covered once who had an obvious example, a very obvious example that was on television, nationally televised, of being not a team player. And before, in advance of their draft, this was back when I was a beat writer, in advance of the draft that year, I got calls from scouts saying, what happened there? What's up with that? What kind of kid is this? Like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten those. They would have just said, well, he won. He plays defense. He plays hard. Okay, we're good. But he had that, so he had to get over that hurdle. So that all comes into it for a player on it. But if you're on a team like that and you're constantly encouraging your teammates and lifting them up and connecting and having great body language, the scouts want to see that. That gets you drafted. In addition, but of course, obviously, you have to be able to have all the physical tools as well, and they can see those just based on the tape and the tests and all of that.
I think it was the movie Draft Day. It may not have been, but I remember that whoever the quarterback that was the runaway number one guy, everybody was on everybody, but the one GM was like, there's something not off. And they looked at there was a video of his birthday celebration. And they said, do you notice anything? There's not a single teammate there. And yeah, that was a movie, but sounds like exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Like they look through all of that. They want to know. And they're going to talk to look, you call the coach. The coach is going to say, great kid, great player, because the coach wants the kid drafted. Because it's once he's on your team, he's your problem, and they can say, look, we put this guy in the first round, a lottery or whatever. So you're unless you have a really close relationship with that particular coach, you're probably, and you're only going to get the straight story if the straight story is a good story. So they're going to look a lot of places to find the negative if there's negative that exists. And look, it is not hard for a basketball player to be a team player. It really isn't. You listen to your coaches. You work with your teammates. If you have a difficult teammate, someone that's hard to cooperate with, then if you're the best player, then you can maybe, address that situation with your coach and say, hey, look, I can't get this guy to screen for me or whatever it is. Or I pass the ball, he never passes it back. The coaches will be aware of that, unless in those rare instances where it's the coach's kid, you'll be fine. So for a guy like McKenzie coming in here, his best path is to listen to what his coaches say and connect with his teammates. What the people, whether it's agents or just, people from, and look, I'm not saying McKenzie has those people that would be negative. I'm talking about other people in the past that have negatively influenced other players. But it's always best. It's the best case scenario is for you to connect with your teammates and to play team basketball, because that will lead to the league. I'm telling you, it does time after time. It gets you drafted. It gets you a job. Fran Fraschilla, my buddy from ESPN, points out that, of the 450 or so players in the NBA ballpark, about 430 of them are role players. So,
everybody cannot be the scorer.
Yes, everybody's not going to be the star. Not everybody's going to be Kevin
Dennis
Durant.
Rodman was not the scorer.
No, and he's in the Hall of Fame. John Havlicek scored a ton of points, but on a lot of his teams, he was coming off the bench. So there's just a lot of examples of that to show you that the success in basketball is mostly done through connecting with 5 other players, whether it's Caitlin Clark connecting with 4 other women, or it's Trace Jackson Davis connecting with 4 other guys. Success in basketball goes through team success. There's not a lot of happy people out there. There's a lot of rich people, but there's not a lot of happy people out there who just go out there to score buckets.
And I've used McKenzie as an example just because, but I will say this. I had the opportunity to talk to him at IU Basketball Media Day, and one of the things that he had said that he had done, he said, oh, no, I researched every player on this roster when it came in. He had done these other things, and I was like kind of impressed because nobody else even suggested something like that. I don't know. I would have even thought of that. I would have probably researched the school, the coaches, but he took it a level further. But that shows also the intellect of today's player.
Oh yeah, the young people that I deal with in college basketball are amazing.
Shockingly, it's shockingly how much smarter they are today.
Well, I think that it part of it is that people underestimate them. Most of the young people that I've dealt with through the years have been really good. I mean, the Pitt team I covered in 1990, 91, and 92. 89, 90, and 91. I'm still connected with a lot of those players today. And when I was down in Winston-Salem for the NCAA tournament first round last year, they wound up two of the guys that I knew from that team, Jason Matthews and Darrell Porter, were in Winston-Salem to see Pitt, and they wound up playing the second round game against Xavier. Sean Miller was the head coach, their former teammate. These guys are all really successful in a lot of different walks of life. Sean, obviously, very successful as a basketball coach. I've dealt with, and I still am connected with people that I covered in Memphis, Cincinnati. They've always been more impressive young people than people expected them to be or gave them credit for. And I think, honestly, I still see that today. Some are more impressive than others. When I met Chris Paul when he was still in high school, just an amazing young man, and he's continued that on all the way through his, a future Hall of Fame professional career. I mean, there are lots of examples like that. So I'm really excited to hear that about him, Mackenzie, because I think that that's a great first step to him being the player Indiana needs to have a tremendous year in the Big Ten and beyond this year.
And last question before I let you go. How do you analyze a team like Indiana? Because they lose Jalen Hood-Schifino, they lose Trace Jackson-Davis. We know what they gained in Khalil Ware, but we don't really know because he was a mystery last year at Oregon. There were some things that he was soft or he didn't have the motor. We talked about Mackenzie Mbako. There's Anthony Walker, the transfer from Miami, who Indiana lost to in the tournament. Peyton Sparks, who's probably going to be a role player. And so they've got new pieces that we just don't know.
Right. That's a lot of college basketball now, but it goes back to what I talked about before. It starts with there's talent. We know there are the things that we know. We know that Xavier Johnson is a significant Big Ten high major point guard. We've seen it. Obviously, he has to stay healthy all the way through the year, but we've seen him be a significant Big Ten point guard. Now, we saw that in too short a spurt in his first year there, and then obviously too short a spurt in his second year there, but it helps this team to have him back. So you've got, as long as he's healthy, and he started last year really well. So he put those two spurts together, end of 2022, start of 2023, were good, was a good long stretch. He just needs to now do that for a full season. We know Malik Renew will play hard, rebound, finish around the goal, defend the baseline, and maybe he can do more. And then we know that Mbako is a significant talent, and they will find a way to take advantage of that. I mean, he's really so we know there's a baseline there. It's going to be good.
And Trey Galloway is probably very underrated.
Yeah, I've said before. I mean, Trey is one of the best facilitators, connectors in college basketball. From ball needs to go from the point to the wing to the post. Nobody better. He does that on defense too. So he's a great connectivity player. So what I look at, you mentioned Khalil Ware. See, that to me, he is the ceiling. And it's apropos because he can reach the ceiling. Yes, but he's the ceiling. If you can find a way to get out of him what is in there, then you go from good to great or very good, somewhere in there. I really think that's the difference to me, and it's a challenge because players like him are rare, not often successful because he's just different. He's so long. Can you take advantage of that length without what last year was a problem for him was physicality? Can you keep him mobile enough that people can't catch up to him to hit him? And in order for him to be mobile enough, he's got to be willing to continue to run or cut. If you want to keep him on the move, he's got to be able to do that. And then you have to find an offense structure that keeps him on the move, but not just for the sake of movement, but for the sake of disarming the defense. So all of that is a challenge for Mike, and I'm sure they've spent a lot of time in the offseason trying to figure that out. Look, if you take him and put him in Trace's place because you had an offense that was ready-made and he could stand there and he could catch it and you're going to be able to get the ball into the post to him, but people are going to be pounding on him. So that's probably not the right approach. You need a new approach. But if you find the ticket that makes him a significant player, and then you can play him for 25 plus minutes and add to you what he can add with his length on defense, then you have a chance to be special.
Mike DeCourcy, I cannot thank you enough. It is much more fun doing this live, man. This is awesome. But thank you so much. The great Mike DeCourcy, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. Everything you just heard. Make sure you're following him on the Sporting News for all of his content, but also on the Big Ten Network as it comes along. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat from the Target Center right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market for Shiny bell. Oh, thank you so much. Yes, sir. Where are you going to dinner? We got dinner plans.
Yeah, I've got friends here. You probably don't remember him. He used to write for the Minneapolis paper. Jeff Shellman. You know? Yeah.
I was talking earlier. I'm not a fan of being here, but last night I decided this is an incredible sports day.
Oh.
I can't believe this is a sports day. I mean, they love their Vikings.
Yeah. Twins.
The Twins are the ALDS is here tomorrow.
Yeah.
And they're winning. Got the Target Field, Target Center, the football stadium, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, then the hockey is over here, then the soccer's over here." I'm like,
yeah.
Damn, this is a sports town.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I have to give them their props.
Oh yeah, I like the place too. I like coming here for a Final Four. When we've come here for the Final Four, I've liked it.
April's probably not terrible.
It's not. It hasn't been for either one. I mean, there've been cold moments, but not the cold.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Big Ten tournament this year. I said, it's probably going to be about like it is right now. Hopefully they're coming.
Oh, I don't know we're going to get that lucky.
Oh, man.
We'll see.
Thank you, Mike.
All right.
Okay, so what we're going to do here when we come back, do you still hear me?
Yep.
Just need to be quick or something.
Yeah, so all you got to do is
Thank everybody.
Recap the show, thank everybody, and head out. It's going to go a little over, but I can fool with that after the fact. So,
Act like a baby and head out.
What?
Act like a baby and head out.
Is that a quote of some sort that I'm not getting?
You know, when birth.
Oh, this was a joke. I get it now. That's a good one. I've never heard that before.
Oh yeah, man.
Today ended up being good, even though we had a rough issues in the beginning.
Today ended up being awesome, actually. And Mike just made it. I mean, that was awesome.
Good. All right, 20 seconds.
All right. Roy says
ahead.
$100 to charity if Jim does the entire show in a full Viking. Well, if I had one, I would.
Someone's got to send the outfit, too.
I would wear the Viking horn.
All right, here we go.
812-824-4040. The Golf Club at Eagle Point in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Wow Food Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, I can't thank everybody enough today. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. It was to acknowledge all you guys. You were awesome, but we ended up having just a packed show today, and it was a blast. So I've got to thank Don Fischer, as always, of course, Dustin Dopir from the Indy Star, and the Hall of Famer Mike DeCourcy, who you just heard from the Sporting News and the Big Ten Network. Tomorrow, we've got more, and we'll be doing it again from right here at Big Ten Media Days. Thank you guys so much. Cannot thank you enough. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. Of course, John, the producer, for keeping us between the white lines. But until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.